We spend a lot of time talking about COVID-19 infections and treatment, but what happens when people survive the virus, get treated, and are asked to go home? What becomes of them afterwards? The post-COVID rehabilitation and recovery process. Well, I have with me one of those lucky people in the studio here, former presidential spokesperson, Dr. Doyin Okupe, who is himself a medical doctor. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening.
And congratulations once again.
Glory be to God.
Now, the last time we spoke, you had just left the isolation center and you were home and it was still fresh. That was a few weeks ago.
Yes.
What has been the experience like post your treatment?
Are you talking about clinically or
no,
socially?
Both clinically and socially. First, clinically.
Clinically, like all diseases, there's a recuperation stage. When you are discharged and you have tested negative, what it means is that the presence of the virus in your body has actually been more or less wiped off. But that does not mean that that is the end of your physical condition, because while you are under attack of the virus specifically, now we know much more and more
about it.
Yeah, it attacks various organs in your body, and even when it has died and it has gone, some of those damages may be slight, may be profound, but they leave some things in their trail. So it is not unusual for weakness to continue. I had there were occasions, there were times when I thought, has this thing really gone? But usually, it's not just my experience, because I also asked other people. They're transient, like you could just start to cough, all right? Or for a long time, I had phlegm. I brought up phlegm, even though I was not even coughing in the hospital. But when I left, I brought up phlegms and things like that. So invariably, though you are not infected, but you are not totally, except for very young people. I mean, I've seen young men, get hit with, COVID-19. For 2 days they're down, third day they're up and about. But for the older folks, especially people with comorbidities and things, it's not that simple. It's not
that easy to return.
It's not, for a fact. It's not.
When you were leaving, because a lot of people don't know about this part, so you're providing a lot of information that a lot of people don't know. When you were leaving, were there certain things you were told to do, and there were certain things you were told not to do, so that the recovery process, as you put it, was complete?
Definitely no. Both the patient and the caregivers are just as excited as, once you get the two negatives, they say, oh, congratulations, you can leave. Because there are people actually hanging
almost like waiting.
Exactly, waiting to take your bed. That is the situation in many places. So, and, really also, except for very, very severe cases, which is less than, maybe is less than 10%, very, very severe cases where people have to go on oxygen therapy or, some interventions and all that. You really do not have too much debilitation. There's not too much debilitation and, prostration as such. So, because the virus itself, has empirical manifestations,
right.
Fever, cough, runny nose, body pains, loss of appetite. These are not things that really weigh a person down. But if you have cardiac issues prior to that infection, right. Or if you have diabetes, like I had, prior to that infection, there are issues.
That complicates things a little.
There are issues, and you may have to, you don't even need to be told. You just, in my own case, normally I do a 30 minutes walk, every evening, around my house. But when I left the clinic, it wasn't, I had some measure of fatigue. I did have some measure of fatigue.
Let me put you on pause, Dr. Okupe. We'll take a break here. And when we return, I'll be asking Dr. Okupe if, in terms of what has happened to him after he was discharged, socially, what people talk about, stigmatization and so on, what his experience has been like. Please stay with us. Welcome back to our studios and our COVID-19 update. Before the break there, we're talking to COVID-19 survivor, Dr. Doyin Okupe. Dr. Okupe, before the break, I said I was going to ask you about something that that makes a lot of people not want to talk about COVID-19, either as patients or as survivors and so on, the issue of stigmatization. That brings itself out socially.
Yeah.
A lot of people tend to stylishly want to not. What has been your experience? Have you witnessed any of that?
Yes, I did. and I find it quite funny. You know, when I was leaving the hospital, I mean, of course, my family members and everybody was, they were anxious. They saying, "Doctor, please, don't allow people to come to your house, net. You know, just rest and this and this and that." But what I actually found out was that people are not even too interested in coming to my house. So, you know, and that's the truth, you know, and because, you know, erroneously, people feel that, you know, somebody who has had COVID and has been, even though he has turned negative, that, you know...
He still presents some kind of danger.
There's, you know, and this one, we know that he had COVID, so why move close to the person? You know, I mean, in one occasion, I had to actually tell a very close friend of mine that, listen, you know, I am the lucky person. You are the one to worry about COVID. You know, I've just removed my mask to make a point.
That's right.
You know, that I don't need to be protected anymore because I cannot infect anybody and nobody can infect me. At least, you know, so far we know that there's scientific evidence now, you know, that when you have COVID and you have turned negative, the antibodies are in your body. What we do not know medically and scientifically is how long it will last. Okay, that will take some time. But as I sit with you, it will be difficult for you to give me COVID, and I can definitely not give you COVID. But, you know, the stigma is there, and it's unfortunate. You know, those who have had COVID, you know, should be the superior people because they are the ones that actually have had them, you know, themselves, you know, sanctified, so to speak. You know, if you haven't had it, you know, you know, you are the problem. No, you know, I am not your problem. I am not your problem. Do you understand? So actually, you know, people should be wary of getting close to you, but people should
not to you.
To me, you know, I have both a scientific certification and a moral and social certification that I cannot infect anybody. You know, but you know, this is why I know, you know, I get in an average of 10 calls a day, and I'm talking seriously. I get an average of about 10 calls a day from associates, family members, people who think that there's something has gone wrong. And when I say, why don't you go to the association? I say, no, I'm not going to anywhere. Do you understand? So there is a problem in the society. People still feel that, these things, you're not supposed to let people know you have it. You know, I keep saying it. It is not your fault that you have it. It is not because of some funny behavior or some, lucidness or something. You know, this is just something, if we are not very careful, a majority of us will eventually and invariably get it and move on. You know, I know for a fact that today, even though the numbers are increasing astronomically, those who are reporting are less than 20% of those who are actually infected in the country. That's the truth. But people, we seem to do a lot of work talking to people and telling them, this issue of stigmatization is not
helpful.
Yeah, it's not helpful. And, really, those who actually have COVID also need to have confidence in themselves. I mean, I'm a doctor, I understand the whole thing, and you cannot put me down. It's not possible. You know what I mean? Because I know what has happened, and I know that, I am better off than a person who's never really had COVID. And if you do have COVID also, you should not be worried or weary of going to the clinic or going to the isolation center, because at the end of the day, you're still looking at, in Nigeria today, our figures, I've watched it consistently. we are less than 3. I mean, the number of deaths is still consistently less than 3%. Consistently, 2%, 2.25. That is where it oscillates. So I mean, it's not. I mean, like, you know, when God forbid, if you are part of that 2.25, it is extremely very painful and hurtful. But you know, it is reassuring enough to let people know that, you know, almost 98% of people who have COVID will get back home without any problem.
This is very important.
It is.
And
It's
people
crucial.
like you consistently talking about it, break that stigmatization, because you're very senior members of your profession, you're very senior members of the society. Then you happen to be a doctor as well, a medical doctor at that. But before I let you go, I want to ask you about what you mentioned last.
Yeah.
And how important you think it will be going forward. We haven't done that many tests.
No, we haven't.
Especially relative to our population.
I was just listening, you know, Egypt, they said they've done about 250,000, you know, tests. You know, I mean, we are so far from that, very, very far from that. We haven't done enough tests.
And therefore,
but it's creeping. I mean,
the
we're
question
going
is, what do we need to do to get more people to go for these tests? Because they say there are about 40 labs across the country, but many of them are idle because nobody is showing up to present themselves.
There are two things I found out. One is accessibility. You know, it took my personal intervention to get a friend to get tested. You know, he had gone everywhere. He had telephoned he had used all the telephones. He was so deep, he just called me, and said, look, Doc, this is my issue. I've been down for 3 days. These are my problems. These are my symptoms. And I said, no, definitely you have COVID. And I had to do one or two things, and he got tested and he got admitted into the isolation center. So there are a lot of people like that who will not go through all that wahala.
Right.
All right. Now, there are also people who feel that there's not much that is being done for people at the isolation centers. And that therefore, why should I bother myself? I know the drugs that I'm using, and I can do all the other things and I'll be fine. And in most cases, it works for them. So, that's number two. Then there are those who feel that, how can we say that me doing Okupe, I have COVID. God forbid, I will hide this one. Even if I'm going to die, God forbid, so those are the three categories of people that we have in the country. So we have to keep educating. We have to keep reassuring people. And we have to improve access. We have to improve access. Those telephones don't work. That is the truth. I'm sorry. But, that is what I get calls all the time from friends. Even other people come get my number from other people and all that. And I know what they tell me. Those telephones do not work in most cases. Right. So, if you are just on your own and you telephone and you try to go somewhere and nobody is answering you, then you have to just resort to something else. So that's the problem.
Indeed, Dr. Okupe, once again, congratulations.
I
don't think I can say that enough. Congratulations, and it's good to see you back fully to your feet. Dr. Okupe, of course, former spokesperson to the president of Nigeria. He's still, of course, a serving politician, so I won't still say that. But, of course, he is, as well, a medical doctor. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
I'm grateful, Adi. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.